we've had someone else now. Excellent. Okay. Welcome to the CEFACT Global Trust Registry project meeting. It's effectively the third of a series of meetings. We have these about every 2 weeks. We had a bit of a break because there were some very important meetings last week in Geneva, which Alina was at personally, and a number of other people maybe on this call were at. So we're going to look forward to an update about what happened last week. Just a quick note, I am recording this meeting. Transcript is generated and we'll produce notes and make those publicly available after the meeting. So I hope that's okay for everybody as they're arriving. Quick, thank you. Quick reminder of codes of conduct. These projects are run under CEFACT codes of conduct. A number of quick things to mention. There are a number of people who will come in that have been sponsored by the head of delegation. All people are welcome to participate, and we are encouraged, of course, to support anybody that comes in from the head of delegation. But I actually think that's an open response to others that wish to collaborate too. It's about global input. We are trying not to incorporate any specific hardware or proprietary software requirements. There is an intellectual property rights approach for the CEFACT about open standards and open development processes. That's the kind of ethos under which we will operate. There's some links in the slides. You can read the actual details if you wish. The first thing after the code of conduct we could do is introductions. At the moment, we've got probably 4 or 5 people that might be new to the calls. Perhaps I'm John Phillips. I'm a co-founder of Suzu, but I'm actually a co-lead of this project, and perhaps more importantly, Alina is the other co-lead of this project, and is the registrar expert on this project. So those of you who are new, do you want to introduce yourselves that are first time at this meeting?
Sure, I could
maybe
go.
my colleague Teresa also.
Cool.
I'm Teresa Turinan as well from Public Corporation of Spanish Land and Commercial Registries. I'm as well the contact point of our corporation in the European Land and Registry Association and the European Law Institute. So my perspective is somehow a bit more linked with European regulation, and so therefore I'm very interested in the project.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Surendra.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Surendra here. I currently lead product and technology for a startup based out of Bangalore in India called Dive. And my work has spanned across DPI initiatives in education, livelihoods, and of late in the decentralized open networks and trust building areas. Quite keen and glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alex, have you been in these meetings before? I know you so well.
No, I haven't. Just in lots of other meetings with you, John. Yeah, I'm Alex Tweedale. I lead product and identity standards at Checked. Also, sort of co-chair at Trust Over IP and a national expert at British Standards Institute. I've been sort of specializing in trust registries for, I would say, over a year now, and looking at different approaches to how we could build them. So very keen to participate in this working group.
Thank you, Alex. Tony?
Yes. Hi, guys. I'm here from Anonymous Labs on the Gold Coast in Australia, a software developing company, and we work a lot. We expect a lot to work in a decentralized identity. And yeah, thanks for inviting. Good to see everyone.
Thank you, Tony. Carmen, have you?
Manuel, maybe our colleague as well.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I attended the previous meeting, but I'm not sure that all the people today were in that meeting, so I will introduce myself anyway. I'm the Managing Director of International Projects and also in charge of the LEI office for the Public Corporation of Land and Commercial Registries Spain. And I'm involved in several digital identity projects, namely the verifiable legal entity identifier, and we're also currently engaged in a large-scale project with Telefonica in Spain for issuing W3C credentials to companies, and I'm thrilled to be part of this discussion, and so good to see you all.
Great to have you here too, Manuel. That's a great palmores, as we say in cycling, to have in the team. Anybody else that has yet to be introduced, please put your hand up or call out.
It's me. Good morning. Do you listen me? Yes,
Yeah.
I'm Carmen Miquel. I'm Deputy Secretary of IPRA Cinder. I was in the previous meeting, I think you have 1 month ago, and I'm very interested in this program because we are an association that has more than 58 members, different countries, and are above all, there are some academic institutions, but above all, property registries institutions. So to find an indicator and to find those points in that we can agree are very important for us.
Thank you, Carmen. I saw my good friend and colleague Joe Spencer arrived. You could say hi too if you want, Joe, if you've got audio.
Yeah, I've got audio. Hi, everyone. I'm the other side of CESU. Not quite as good looking, of course, but my background is predominantly in financial services. But John and I have been playing the road of CESU and digital trust for now at least 6 years, and I'm delighted to see this program up and running. And also, I've been working in the UNTP side of things as well.
Thank you all. So I suggest for anybody that feels they haven't yet said hello, please do so in the chat if you like. There's a sort of chat facility on these calls, so you can just type in some messages or hellos or where you're from and so on. That'd be great. I want to sort of move on to what I'm really excited to hear, which is Alina's sort of feedback from the Geneva meetings of last week. So how would you want me to do this, Alina? You know what slides will come next. Do you want me to show those slides now?
Yes, I would like to mention that I participated on behalf of our public corporation of London Business Registers, the Global Digital Conference in Geneva, the 1st and 2nd of July. And then the 3rd and the 4th of July, I participated in the plenary of UN CEFACT, and I acted as a Spanish head of delegation, as I was replacing our colleague Manuel that could not attend, unfortunately. So I think we should start with the Geneva conference, digital conference. There we had a session where actually several sessions where we had the chance to present our project, and moderated by Steve Kaplan, which is the vice chair of UN CEFACT. And I will show you a few slides, especially for those who are attending this meeting for the first time, and just to make a short briefing of our project. As John was mentioning, we are both co-leading this project. Thanks to his amazing support, I could present the slides in Geneva. As you can see on the first slide, our project, I would say, is divided in two sub-projects or has a dual purpose somehow. On one hand, we are aiming to create a global trust registry, which is a register of registries where all United Nations member states' national registry could register. We should not get confused despite this title, because some people thought we wanted to create global register where we would grant access to national databases. This is not our intention in any case. And on the other hand, we aim to create a digital identity anchor, which is an identifier, a cryptographically verifiable credential issued by the authoritative national registers to the registered properties, companies, assets, product, or trademarks. If you can now go to the next slide.
I will. And what the word on recommendations, Alina, is so important, isn't it? That we are bound by this project to provide recommendations that the UN CEFACT group can decide if to sort of adopt and make those recommendations. We're not a we don't have power or authority to tell people what to do. We can recommend things and hopefully it can get adopted.
Yes, actually, this was one of the main questions that arose during the global conference, as people were saying, "Oh my God, you're not now going to interfere in our national legal frames," and said just to mention that neither United Nations standards, neither the recommendation are not cannot create new obligations for those member states. We would not interfere. This, in any case, these recommendations or standards should be developed by a national legal frame so that they can be implemented within the national territories. So just to, I think this is very, very important issue to consider. As you can see here on the next slide, regarding the project's objectives, and we were also mentioning, our project seeks to recognize the government registries that already exist. We do not pretend to create new registries, and understand their legal governance framework, what exactly they issue, and how they make that digitally accessible and verifiable. We will also propose a governance framework for UN CEFACT, and we'll seek to define a data model and verification process for registries identifiers, as well as we will develop implementation pilots. I was already mentioning that in Spain we intend to develop an implementation pilot in the field of business registry and asset registries. We already have national identifiers. For example, in land registries, it's named CRU, Código Registral Único, Unique Registry Code, that would be in English. And in the business registry as well, our national identifier. And all this supports the SDGs that you can see mentioned on the slide. I think we can pass to the next one. Okay, regarding the registries we are interested about, that was also one of the questions that arose at the global conference. What exactly registers do we refer to? Obviously, business registers, land registers, facility registers, product registers, trademark and asset registers. Also, we have to consider that not all the member states have these or all of these registers. So any of those, as long as they fulfill the minimum requirements, set of requirements we are already working on, should be able to register in the Global Trust Registry, as we also pretend to be friendly with and leave the gate open to all national registries to be able to register in the Global Trust Registries. So I could already mention one of the main requirements that they should fulfill. Obviously, it has to be a sovereign authoritative register, as you can see here mentioned, that are important for the supply chain transparency and maintained by United Nations member states. And going to the next slide, John, thank you. This is actually how it works in practice, the Global Trust Register. So the UN CEFACT. We can also talk about a directory, because some people, not that they disliked the term global register, but actually if we think about it from a practical or pragmatic perspective, it is actually a directory of registries. So for each registry, it would be established the jurisdiction and legal mandate, governance and operational integrity, authoritative status as recognized under national and international laws, and last but not least, technical verification endpoints through which credentials such as the digital identity anchor we were talking about can be validated. This, as you can see, enables both public and private sectors, whether that might be banks, finance entities, custom authorities, regulator, courts, or any other institutions or supply chain participants to perform the due diligence and verify the legal identity based on trusted, sovereign, and cryptographically verifiable data sources. Okay, I'm going to the next slide. I think it's about digital identity. Okay, this is how, okay, here you can see the logical model or how it actually works, referring to the national registries, as I mentioned before, might be land, business, asset, trademark, that will, as long as they fulfill the minimum requirements we are working on, could then register in the Global Trust Registry. Okay, I'm going to the next slide. Yes, going to digital identity anchor. Regarding this identifier, we also had a few questions from the audience during the presentation in Geneva, and they were asking because some of them, they thought we will have to replace or erase our national identifiers. And they all, as well, they refer to the European identifier, they refer to the VLI. We do not intend to delete or to destroy our national identifiers or already existing infrastructure. So what we aim is to create this digital identity anchor, which is a cryptographically verifiable credential issued by an authoritative register that maps the business ID to one or more decentralized identifiers. We can actually build on our existing infrastructure. It somehow can wrap the existing identifiers or credentials that different registers from the UN member states already have. And we consider that they can work in parallel with the other identifiers, such as VLI or the European identifier. In second place, it certifies that a certain company, property, asset, product, or trademark, it is legally registered under the register's governance framework. And going to the next slide, John. Okay, here you can see how it actually works, the digital identity anchor, and that it enables the buyer to verify that the supplier business ID and the decentralized identifier both are registered with the authority and hence are legitimate and legally recognized. And then digital identity anchor would be embedded into all trade documents such as invoices, contracts, certificates of origin, compliance declarations, and then the relying party can verify that the digital identity anchor is cryptographically valid and the issuer is listed in the GTR. So just to finalize with these questions that we also received from the audience, we do not pretend to destroy the existing infrastructure. It's true that we do have European identifiers and we do have national identifiers, but what we aim is to create an identifier which is global, because some of them only apply to business registers, others to land or whatever. But the digital identity anchor we aim to create is global, so it applies to land, it applies to business, asset, trademark, register, to products, and it can work in parallel with already existing identifiers in European and as well as national ones. And another thing I also mentioned in the global conference in Geneva, and I think I like this phrase very much, was that trust is trust, and trust is not given by digitalization nor by issuing credentials or verifiers, but it is given by the public authority, which in this case are the authoritative registers. So I don't know if we have any more slides regarding this, John.
I think the next two were
Yes.
Yeah. So do you want me to pull up one of these to walk through as well? Happy to do that.
Yes, I think regarding the plenary, obviously it's impossible to mention all the agendas, that to the fact that it was so extensive, but I would mention the most important, which was recommendation 49, transparency at scale, fostering sustainable value chains.
Was that in this one?
Yes, if I can find it.
I think it's
This
actually
one, no, it's the other
it's the
one.
other
It's
one.
item
Yeah.
3, exactly.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
this one, item 3.
Okay, so this is where I think recommendation 49 starts being discussed in the deck.
Yes.
So it gives a bit of a purpose. So for those of you who, just to give Alina's voice just a brief break, the recommendation 49 is the sort of body of work that was started about 2.5 years ago now in UN CEFACT in recognition of a desire shared across the United Nations members to reduce what was seen as a problem with greenwashing. And the initiative was to write some recommendations for countries as to how they might reduce the risk of greenwashing. And that is the 49th recommendation that's being published by UN CEFACT. And the plenary this just last week now in Geneva was to decide whether or not it was ready for publication. And there were a couple of changes that were agreed as it went through its review process, Alina.
Yes, just to mention, we had a few supporting statements, including Spain, among which I would mention the support from the European Commission. The European Commission supported the content and the body of the recommendation 49, but the annex regarding the protocol, as they said, could be improved, as well as the technical content, not only at the regulatory level. And nevertheless, they support the recommendation with the condition that UNTP aligns with the principles of the body. We also had a supporting statement from Nigeria that as well supported the recommendation, as they consider that aligns with the trade practices and fully endorses the principles of the recommendation. We also supported, on behalf of Spain, supported this recommendation as we consider that it aligns with the principles that rule in our business registries. And regarding the decision, the plenary decision to be noted, the plenary approved the EC recommendation 49, transparency scale, fostering sustainable value chains, with the removal of reference to the UNTP in the main body of its text and the removal of its Annex 1. And these suggestions to make for making sustainability information available across jurisdictions. And the plenary also noted further work on implementation of its recommendation that may require extra budgetary funding.
Just for the audience that aren't necessarily fully aware of how this worked, the inside the draft that was submitted for approval was this Annex 1, which included a fairly detailed description of the work that had been going on in parallel and development of what's called the United Nations Transparency Protocol. And the decision was basically to sort of untangle the two pieces, so the recommendations to countries could be submitted, and the UNTP is an example of how you might follow some of those recommendations, and that's how that sort of they've progressed, if you like. So that, I think, as a formal document, will be released in the next few weeks. Did they commit to a deadline by which they'd release the formal version, Alina?
As far as I know, not that I know. I will also mention from the recommendation 49, of course, the UNTP, that this was important, but the scope as well. In the scope, we have a few principles like transparency, scale, value, chain, traceability, trust in sustainability information, because it might be that people don't know what exactly it's about. Data sovereignty, which I think is important, common core data model, circular economy model. I think you can find this recommendation on the UNCFACT website. It is online, so you can have a look of it.
Yes, recommendation. You're right, Alina. A recommendation 49 prior to the review is available, and you can download and see that. And you'll see that you'll actually still see Annex 1 included, and you'll see the reference to UNTP. What the final version will have is not that Annex 1 and not the explicit reference to UNTP, but it's still very much a supported instrument, if you like, of the implementation of recommendation 49. So that was sort of I guess quite exciting to hear you say the actual sort of voting of countries and what countries were saying about things. It is, after all,
Yes,
a UN.
that was exciting. I would also like to mention a controversial point regarding our project. It was one of the questions that arose from the audience. That considering that in different, actually the question came from Germany, considering that in different United Nations member states that we have, for example, in the field of business registries, Germany said that they have many offices or many registers, not offices, registers. So they were asking how would be possible if we have so many business registers that all of them register. Would it be possible from a technical point of view that all of these registers can register in our global trust registry? This is what, from their perspective, would be a challenge. And our answer was that, for example, in Spain, despite the fact that we have, for instance, in land registry, around 1,000 offices, end of the day, the register is unique, and the decentralized organization in different regions does not mean that each of those are different registries and they will not be able to register in our global register.
I know Alex has got his hand up, so we'll go to you in a second, Alex. In the conversation, I know you're on the panel with Steve and others in the
Yes.
meeting. How was that answered in the actual meeting?
How the question was answered in the meeting?
Was there a response to that challenge or that observation? Was there any kind of thing said, or was it just left as, yes, that's a challenge and we need to think about? Is there a response we need to know about or not?
No. Our response was that if different member states find it difficult, it doesn't mean that the others do not have to work on the project, and they can implement it when they can join and register.
I had when you were accounting to me this question, I had an idea. This is a project where we develop ideas and write them down. But one of the observations is we recognize at the very start of this project, countries have an uneven level of maturity and capability in existing systems, and that's the reality of the world. And therefore, the fact that Germany has many registries of business identity is a fact. We're not trying to change facts. So if there's a lot of them in Germany, that's a thing. And it begs this question about, can you plausibly recognize them all? I think that's a good question. It also begs the question that, well, how do you currently prove that a company is registered in Germany if there are so many registries? It sounds like that's a trust problem that you might want to resolve in Germany as well. So it's sort of not for us to
exactly. We're coming back to what I was just mentioning, that trust is trust, and trust is given by the authorities, not given by an identifier or by creating a digital directory of registries. So if in Germany or what any other country,
we shine a light on it, in a sense. We shine a light on, well, you've got 1,000 registries. That's a bit of a problem. Now, we need to go to the audience. Alex, you had your hand up first, and then I'm on to you after that, Manuel.
Yeah, I just wanted to make an observation about that question, because I think there's quite a few layers here. Because for the new EIDAS regulation in Europe, part of what is being built on the trust side is that every issuer of credentials or the attestation of attributes will need to be registered within a trusted list in Europe. And they're currently struggling with the scalability and sort of uptime of these European trusted lists. And Germany is very much leading in this space in the implementation of their EUDI wallet, and the trust issues that they're encountering there, I think, will probably be replicated in how the UN global trust registries are hosted. I think it would be interesting to take a look at the architecture of the European trusted lists for relying parties, for issuers of qualified attestations of attributes, and see, okay, there's there's challenges to the scalability and infrastructure here. How can we improve on that with the Global Trust Registry project?
It's good. It's a good point. I'll quickly go before going on to Manuel. I think the ambition of this project is to faithfully recognize what exists first. So in other words, what are the trustworthy business registries of German businesses, for example, and then subsequently to wonder how we might do automatic or verification online and in real time, that kind of process. It's a subsequent but necessary step. But the first thing is, what are the authoritative registries in Germany of businesses? And even that would be useful. And then the next phase is, as you said, the challenge of how do we make this scalable on a global level. Manuel, sorry, you were waiting for a long time.
No worries. I find it very interesting, this observation about the situation in Germany, where they also have a decentralized operational framework for commercial registers, where they actually have these commercial courts, which are based on the various lender. And in fact, they've been struggling for many years to provide a centralized platform so people can apply for information on these certain companies all over Germany, because in the beginning you had to directly contact the commercial court where the company was registered. It was cumbersome and it was not very operationally efficient. So this resonates with a problem we had when we started issuing LEIs back in 2014, where the provincial business registers in Spain were directly managing and issuing the LEIs to users. And when the accreditation framework was introduced in 2016, it was simply not possible to go on like that. So we had to put a layer on top of those provincial registers, which was the public corporation, it was Colegio, which somehow coordinated and served as a single point of contact with the Global Legal Entity Identifier Foundation. So from an operational standpoint, there is a single point of contact, which is Colegio. And I think in those cases where the registers operate in a decentralized manner, it would be necessary for them to engage in this initiative to also establish some kind of single point of entry to the system, which somehow serves as a layer on top of those decentralized offices. Because otherwise it would simply not be possible to engage. But it's not that difficult, it's not that costly. And of course, there's already very advanced work done in Germany to provide this layer of interconnection and coordination. But I think this is a problem that will show up a few times, because there are many countries where the registers are decentralized, just as it is the case in Spain. And as Alina mentioned, it's not impossible, and actually it's quite easily done when you have this layer, the single point of entry to the system.
To be honest, technically, because I'm not John and you, Manuel, are tech. I'm not tech. I'm legal. Would be interesting if you could explain us how, from a technical point of view, in the case of those countries that have a decentralized organization, how would be this possible from a technical point of view?
I guess one of the things to answer that question with is another observation or another requirement, if you like, as we might put in our thing. If we have a decentralized process of issuance of registration, of issuance of a company, there still needs to be a way of making sure that this isn't a duplication of an existing record, that a company hasn't registered itself 2, 3, 4, 5 times. If that isn't necessarily a technical thing, right? It can have some technical support and backup, but the requirement, if you like, needs to be a legal requirement that it is illegal to multiply register the same company in many jurisdictions if that is the decision of the legal infrastructure, right? So it's sort of what we can only hope of technical solutions are that they faithfully echo the law, legislation, policy of the country in which the systems are set up. And that's kind of all we can't expect them to solve problems that exist underneath that. So the decentralized technologies that we will want to get towards, we want to promote the idea of registrars being able to self-issue if they choose to do so, to actually not just make their lists accessible and checkable so you can go there and look at and find, but that such make them possible for them to issue, if they choose to do so, credentials that can be held by parties that then present them. And that's one of the modes of decentralization. That can be to the actual companies that hold the proof that they are this company. So there's a decentralized issuance, if you like, so a presentation. It can come from one central issuer, but multiple people hold it and then present it. But the multiple issuers is a more of a problem within the governance of that jurisdiction. You know, if they've got multiple issuers, they need to solve the problem about how do you make sure amongst your multiple issuers that there isn't a doubling up or another error that creeps in because of the fact you're running multiple of them independently. And that is a problem we can't solve for them. We can only reflect in our directory what it is that they do. And that's the limit of our ability, I think. But it's a great, I think it was a great question, a difficult question, but a great question.
It was difficult, yes.
I wanted to reflect on something Alina showed us all a little earlier, and sort of walk into the next phase of the discussion, if I can. There was this diagram which she very well handled me dumping on her when she was in Geneva, saying, "Look, talk to this because I think this is a summary." Now, I wanted to give an explanation of why I think this is a reasonable summary of the logical approach we're taking for this project. So what we're trying to show on this diagram is that in this instance there are 4 separate, think of them as jurisdictions or countries across which some supply chain is running. And I've gone from a mining operation through to shipping, through to some processing plant, through to some sort of assembly and construction, through to a final assembler of what looks like a car. Bearing in mind, I've grabbed all these icons from various sources, so it's take the car with some credibility here. The idea is that that's an existing supply chain. Supply chains work. We already have, you know, the global commerce system is happening. We are shipping things and making things and buying things. It's all happening already. What we're trying to do with this project is to help that process have more kind of verifiability, more capability of checking things. So we recognize that these existing entities will register themselves with a local, in the sense of what jurisdiction they operate in, registrar. And our phrasing for this is authoritative registrars, so those that exist in nation states under the legal framework of that country, and they have those existing registration. What we're then saying is that those have a choice. They may choose to have themselves registered inside the UN CEFACT registry that we want to design the requirements for. And the benefit of doing that is that this last entity here, this little car manufacturer, can check that the issuing authority for their suppliers recognizes these two, the ship and the plant, as I've drawn them here, then can also check that that authority is also in the UN CEFACT registration process. That they're actually, that not only are the registering authority for those entities, but that authority is itself recognized as the authority for that jurisdiction. And similarly, we can then move back further with if we follow the UNTP line of thinking, which is about the ability to go upstream, transparency at scale, this same supplier could then check the suppliers of their primary supplier. They can go further back upstream and check. And they might want to check for things like greenhouse gas emissions, scope 3 type stuff if you're looking at sustainability, or they might want to check for things to do with tariffs, to say whether or not a particular country has or hasn't been involved in the process of producing the content that they're now selling as a product. So there's a number of reasons why you might want to move up this supply chain and see further things. And some of the requirements that we have as a world, like modern slavery reductions, require companies to go as far back up the supply chain as they possibly can to assert that there is no modern slavery involved in the provision of their product or service. So that's the kind of thinking behind here. But we would be this little wheel here. Now, that gave us a way of saying what we're actually going to be producing for the project, the deliverables. Now, Alina and I were tapped on the shoulder by Steve Capel to run this project, and we've sort of been making sense, as everybody does, of the project that they have. And this is a way of making sense of the deliverables that we're going to be producing. So if we look at that chart, we've got now a number of deliverables, in total 5 that I've called out here. One I'll show you in a minute or two has been worked on already by Alina and the team, which is beginning to look at eligibility requirements to be met by registries. Now, we want those to be meaningful. In other words, we want registries to have meaning when they are recognized. So they need to have a legal basis. They need to have a certain sort of process by which they recognize or onboard entities and so on. So there needs to be something of substance behind their system, and therefore some of there are a number of requirements, but we don't want them to be so onerous that countries can't get in. It's in other words, we don't want this to be a kind of qualitative kind of your system's better than this system, therefore you can't come in unless you raise your quality of system. So there's a sort of necessary minimum viable kind of eligibility kind of thing, but we will set those. And then we have to decide what type of information are we interested in about registries, what type of thing. So we had we can show you a candidate kind of table that looks at things like what is the legal basis, where's the law that says the registry exists and the operating authority of that registry, and what type of things do you register, and so on. So there's a number of sort of qualities we were beginning to look at for the data types. When we move further up in this model, the exchange and querying of information is where, as Alina was showing us earlier, this digital identity anchor comes into play. So what might that look like, and how might we both lean on existing recognition and identify structures used by registries and enable some sort of universal resolver kind of a process. So there are models that people are working on. One of them, for example, is called GLU, G-L-U, Global Legal Identifier Unit or something. I can show you some links later, but what we want to do is not reinvent things that have already got reasonable answers to this question. How might we do DIAs? And then, of course, if we're actually going to run this thing, if the UN CEFACT is going to run it, there's a number of governance questions to ask about how might such a system work. And if you're familiar with like passport control with smart passports and the way ICAO works, which is the body that looks after the public key directory system for countries, for passports, that sort of thinking is the kind of thing we would need to go towards. How might such a system operate? It's a recommendation. It won't be operating when we finish this project. We'll have written recommendations, and then it will be up to various bodies to decide if to follow up and follow through. But what we want to do is show that it's possible with implementation pilots. That's what these two sort of implementation pilots are on the right-hand side. So that gives us the kind of structure for the deliverables. And what we've done is produce documents that look a bit like that diagram, right? So the numbering is the same, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Each of those documents is currently a Google document, so allow us to all edit and record the changes and so on. We might move to a GitHub-based repository and go to Markdown and other things. I'm a little wary of doing that because I think for many people who aren't necessarily software coders and so on, they may be more used to editing documents that look like a document rather than editing via pull requests and forking and other phrases that you use when you're in GitHub. And I can show you, actually, I'll bring it over. This is what that drive looks like. And this is the work that, this is an example file that has been worked on by Lena and the team. I put it into a sort of format to make it look like the project file. So each document I propose will have something like the structure. So title of the project, title of the UN CEFACT work, the particular topic we'll be addressing here, the image of the map so you can kind of know where you are. This about the project, I'm lazy. Those of you who know me well know I'm lazy. So I would like to write this once and use many, so that we will write this as one particular file, if you like, and then we include it into those documents that are needed about the project. And if we change the about the project, all the files get the new about the project. There's going to be a unique purpose and scope for each project, and we've already got all those in the documents. We're going to follow what many may recognize as the sort of standard process for doing requirements in terms of this capitalized phrasing of must not, required, and all that sort of those sort of phrases. We have a shared glossary that we're producing. So again, this is a single document file. It's in fact in a spreadsheet. And then if we decide that the glossary needs new additions or changes, then all the documents that have a glossary will get the same change. Again, I'm trying to be lazy. And then we get into the guts of what the requirements may be. So remember, this is the one about eligibility for registries to be included in what we call this, the authoritative registry directory, or whatever the system is we call this. And this is the sort of draft of it. So this is where I was asked by somebody kind of 10 and what the work to be done is. This is where we're going to start asking people to help collaborate with us on sort of the guts of these documents. You know, what should be included in here, what shouldn't be included in here. Have we addressed these requirements in the right way? That's the sort of thing that I really am looking forward to the community helping us sort of get right. Is there any, you were working this up until you went to Geneva, Alina. Is there anything that you want to sort of pull the audience towards in this document?
No, but I would like, I don't know if everybody that is attending now has already registered as UN CEFACT expert, and I would like call people to participate and to add comments and yeah, because we have this the sections of the draft, and if they could participate and make any suggestions or comments, they are all welcome. And,
absolutely. And I think there's a couple of things I want to say about this. Well, I know there's a few, certainly colleagues from the United States, so Daryl O'Donnell and Drummond Reed in particular, and Scott Perry. So three people I know that have applied. It's going slow, and I know, Alex, you've been trying to get in as well. So we need to try and work out a way to fast track people. So the basic idea, there's two sort of ideas here. Recognition as a UN CEFACT expert sounds glorious. It's a nice thing to put on your LinkedIn profile, but the fundamental thing is that it's a recognition acceptance on the participant that they agree to the IPR rules and the other things. Now, I think that agreement might be separable from the recognition by the head of delegation or something. I'm going to try and find out with the Secretariat how we might enable people who have real experience in the sort of technology and solution area to sort of participate, but I don't want to break any rules about how UN CEFACT projects need to run. So that's my aim at the moment. I think we can surely accept observations from people, observer comments, if you like, and then decide, you know, amongst the registered experts, how to or if to accept a comment. And I think that's maybe a way ahead, right? So that, unfortunately, that would mean I can't get those experts I've just named to actually write the stuff themselves, but they can at least recommend it, and then I can just copy paste or something.
Yes, actually, we had Drummond Reed. We had him on the panel with us in the session International Trade Identity Across Borders. We had as well Jean Huang.
Yes, from Sydney. Yeah.
Yes, from Australia, talking about legal alignment on identity cross-border and UNCITRAL model law. That was very interesting. And we had as well Jose Cantera speaking about IOTA and EBSI and where the LT fits into this picture. That was a really interesting session during the digital identity, during the digital conference. So
a couple of sort of...
I don't know if Drummond has already registered as an expert, and he's
registered. Well, he's applied. So Drummond has applied, Daryl O'Donnell has applied, Scott Perry has applied, Alex Tweedale has applied. So we've got a number of people who've applied, and the process seems to be going a bit slow at the moment. So we'll try and unblock that process. But just stepping away from that bureaucracy for a second, even putting files in a space where people can comment on it becomes interesting, because commenting on these files, as I'm showing them here in this directory, these are Google documents, okay? Now, many of us may have worked in collaborative groups where Google Suite products are used to create documents. It's relatively simple, but you do need some form of Gmail or Google Suite account. Now, those are free. You can create one. I know Alina's got a Gmail account you can use. Everybody can create a Gmail account and use it. But the interesting thing is to align that account to the individual that's contributing to the thing. So how do you stop people that you don't know coming in? So we might need to think about giving everybody a commentability on these documents, and only those that are kind of recognized, and we've kind of recognized who they are, give them editing capability to these documents. That's maybe a way forward. Those were the key things I wanted to get through today. We did get on to, I think there's a, oh, that's me talking about this three-step process. I think really we're on the sort of questions phase, and we've probably already been there. So I try to keep these to 50 minutes so everybody can get to the next meeting, which is at the top of the hour for most people. But any burning issues or questions that people want to ask? Surendra.
Yeah, hi. This might be a bit naive and I may not have the full context, but I'm wondering when this takes off and gets into the implementation usage phase, how does it look like? Or in a sense, is it the UN's sort of infrastructure or technology solution that powers these identity anchoring and all of that? Is that how it's visualized? Or who offers these solutions?
So that's a great question. It's not naive, but no questions are going to be naive here. But it's a great question. So for the sort of principle of this project, we will write recommendations about how things might be done. Countries decide if they're going to do them. And that includes implementing changes or doing anything different to what they currently do. They have the sovereign right to decide if to do so. And the UN isn't going to sort of fund work for those countries to do those changes or to make those additions or anything else that they're doing. Alex.
Yeah, excuse me, John.
Sorry.
Yes, I would like, I don't know if maybe it was my fault. I didn't mention clear enough in the beginning. We have to distinguish between the UN CEFACT and in general, between United Nations standards or recommendation. And as I mentioned, we are not able to create obligations for member state or new legal framework. This is on the member states. And distinguish between these standards or recommendation and the actually between the implementation within the national territory and the national framework, implementation and development of pilot project. This is on the member state. We provide and we work on the standards or recommendations, and then the member states could or should develop and implement this in their national legal frames.
But that's exactly right, Alina, and a couple of other things for Surendra. One is the outcome should be that implementation companies could build to the recommendation. If countries decide to adopt it and it becomes a thing, then there's an opportunity for product and service companies to provide a product and service to the countries that decide to do this work. So that's sort of encouraging, if you like, global commerce and trade and so on. The part that the UN CEFACT would need to consider if and how to run is the sort of sustainability of its own directory. So it currently has systems like the ICAO PKD system running for passports, public key management, and that has to have a sustainability quality to it. So it needs to have funding, it needs to have sort of an operational quality and so on. So something of that would need to be considered in an operationalization of this process, but this project doesn't have that sort of budget or that wherewithal until it gets through an approval process and until they decide, yes, that's what we want to do.
But we will create a directory of the registries. Yeah. This we will do.
Yeah, this will.
But regarding the digital identity anchor, this is on the member states and their national legal frames then to develop these recommendations that we're working on.
Alex.
So with regards to the digital identity anchor, would it be in scope of this work to create, say, a standard or a data model to say, this is a recommended approach for how these digital identity anchors should be represented. You can then choose whether or not to implement that yourself, but this would help interoperate with the authoritative registrar of registers.
That's exactly the spirit in which the project is meant to run, Alex. Exactly right. And yeah, you're very familiar with this problem space, right? But there's a number of ways in which you might choose to be, I guess, accommodating existing structures and have a kind of wrapper approach, and a few other things can be thought about how to make this as interoperable and sort of accessible as it can be. But yes, that's exactly the spirit. We'd write a recommendation. It's up to countries to decide if they adopt it, and it can make it easier or not.
And just final, just very quick, just point on that. Is it within scope to write a standard or a recommendation for existing standards? Because that's two different sort of kettles of fish there.
So my approach to this, but this is a collaborative project, right? So I don't decide. I'm sort of working with people. But the idea I have is that if there's an existing open standard, so in other words, acceptable to the UN to do a thing, we would be foolish not to take note of it, right? So if there's something useful that we can adopt. So if you look at the UNTP project we mentioned, it's adopted W3C VC data model 2.0 and DIDS and so on. So yeah, we would be fools to not recognize existing ways of working and standards that have been adopted. If there's a gap, do we have to work out a way to fill that gap? Yeah, what would need to be written to fill it? The type of thing that Alina's working on about requirements, eligibility requirements, and so on, those are obviously kind of quite unique to the context of this project, and they're not likely to be a standard. Surendra, maybe, yeah, okay, one more question. Surendra.
Sorry, and I think this is a follow-up on what Alex is asking. I believe where Alex is coming from is that while there is W3C data model, it's generic to any form of credential, but say for identities, especially there was, I think a W3C, some working group was there on identity credential as well. With some of the latest developments in agentic, there is again a talk of what does identity mean now for a virtual sort of piece of acting code and so on. So I feel what Alex is hinting at is with India having not a standard, but India having its own Aadhaar ID spec, which is owned by 1 billion plus people, countries having their own specs of various kinds, there might be a need to have a recommended like an ID or an identity data model. I believe Alex is trying to hint at that. And I would also just follow up on to say there might be a need for such a schema or data model, which is specific to the purpose of identity.
So I think you've both nominated yourselves to work on delivery number 3, which is the digital identity anchor specification. But yes, those points are well made. One quick point to remind ourselves, we are in the first instance looking at supply chain participant interesting things, not so much people. They will become interesting, they always are interesting, but initially it's things like business, organization ID, land, assets, these sort of elements are not the sort of quite necessary later on thinking about individuals and people and a sort of identity of people. So that's sort of one possible simplification, but it still is a complex space. Okay, Alex, you're posting useful things still, but I'm going to call time because I do want to try and keep to my promise for people. That has been fabulous. Thank you all. What we will do is the meeting's recording will automatically produce a transcript. It will produce some minutes. I'll check those and then share them all with you. If you go to the calendar that gave you these the video conference details, that calendar will automatically include the attachments for the meeting minutes and transcript and so on. So you kind of go back and look in the past, you can see the previous transcripts and meeting minutes and so on. So that's it, really. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you very much, and we're looking forward to comments, suggestions, and that everybody participates to the project.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Good one. Bye.
Cheers.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye-bye.